Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to take a look at reviewing the beginning part of lesson 2.3, which is going to be quick graphs for lines. We looked in lesson 2.1 at making that table of values of those input and outputs for our functions. And so now we're going to look at key characteristics of functions and equations to see how those will help us graph. Slope-intercept form is f of x equals mx plus b. We're used to seeing y equals mx plus b, and we'll still see that, but we want to get used to seeing that function notation. Keep in mind, m is still the slope that we were working with in lesson 2.2, and b is the y-intercept. So we do look at this from very much of a review standpoint. So for us, they want us to graph. That's what they're asking us to do here. So what we're going to do is we're always going to start with b. This is our starting point. This is where x is equal to 0, which is why we always included 0 on our table. So we're going to start at -2. And then our slope tells us that rate of change. So if we think back to those candle activities and we think back to the toothpick activities, that ratio of 1/2 means we're going up 1, we're adding 1 for every 2. So we're going up 1/2, adding 1/2, adding 1/2. So think of that toothpick to help you out. Now the difference here is we're not just going to go towards the positive direction. We're not just going to go to the right. We're going to need to get our graph to go to the left. We don't have a situation context here, so we're going to include positive x values and negative x values. So we're going to go down 1/2, down 1/2. And so we saw that if we went down 1, left 2, those were still two negatives making a positive move. And so there's our line. We're going to start with our b value, the y-intercept. That's when x equals 0. So we're going to start at 3. And this time we have a slope of -3. So you may have to think of this as a ratio over 1. So we have -3, which means we're going to go down 3, but we still have to go right 1. We have to have one positive move. Down 3, positive 1. Down 3, positive 1. Down 3, positive 1. Then we're going to do the same thing, but go in the reverse. We're going to go up 1, or I'm sorry, up 3, but now we need a negative move. So left 1, up 3, left 1. We're going to connect those. And there's our line. And last but not least, we have a b value of 0. So we're going to start at the origin. And so we have this -3/4. So we're going to think of going down 3, but then we're going to go to the right 4. That gives us our negative slope, down 3 to the right 4. That's about all I'm going to fit on here. So now I'm going to go up 3, but then I have to go left 4 for that one negative. Positive, and then negative. And we can connect those. And that's how we make quick graphs getting x and y intercepts. And I'm sorry, x and y intercepts, slopes and y-intercepts. Well, now what we're going to do is take equations and identify those. So keep in mind our last screen, we said that our functions were y equals mx plus b in slope-intercept form. So m is the coefficient on x. So if I identify slope, I'm going to say m is equal to 2 and b is equal to -1. Make sure you're using those signs. When we take a look at number 5, we have y is equal to -4x. Well, the coefficient on x is -4, so we have m is equal to -4. They didn't give us a b value, and so what we're going to recognize is that there is a b value of 0. For number 6, I don't have y equals, so this is what we talked about needing to know from chapter 1 is how to solve for y. So I'm going to subtract 4x from each side. So I have -y is equal to 2 minus 4x. So make sure you're bringing that negative down. And now we're going to divide by -1. So I'm not teaching you anything new here. This is what we did in chapter 1. And so we're going to then divide. This is going to give me a -2, and -4 divided by -1 is a positive 4x. I've done a lot of algebra, but I haven't solved the problem that they gave me. Let's see if I can move this one out of the way. I need to solve, and I to identify m and b. That's why I did that. So my f is not the first number, but it's the coefficient on x. So if we look at how we rewrote that, our x term is at the end of the problem. So our x coefficient is 4. It's plus 4, so it is a positive 4. Our b value is the constant. That's what we have when x is equal to 0, so we have a negative 2 in this case. For number 7, the slope and y-intercept, slope is undefined. That's what we would tell us. And because it's x equals 2, it never crosses the x or the y axis, so there is no y-intercept. So a little bit of a trick problem there. When we look at h, it's kind of the same thing. We don't have a slope, but what we need to keep in mind here is that because it's y equals, we could write that as 0 times x minus 1. I can't do it for x equals because there's no slope-intercept form that starts with x equals. But when I have y, I can put in a 0 times x. So I have 0 slope, and I have a y-intercept, or a b value, of negative 1. All right, so now we want to graph from slope-intercept form. Well, it's no different really than the first 3 or 4 columns that we did, except for this time you've got to pull out what m is, you have to pull out what b is. So m is going to be equal to 2, it's that coefficient on x, and then our b value, we have to make sure we take signs into consideration, is negative 5. So I'm going to go down 5. I'm negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is my starting point. And then I have a positive 2. If you need to write that as a ratio of over 1, so you have 2 over 1, that means you're going to go positive 2 and then write 1. Increase 2, go write 1. We're going to do that across there. I take it all the way across my graph. Notice my points are still making a straight line, and that way it's easier for me to connect these without a ruler. But now I'm going to go down 2 and left 1, 2 negatives, down and left, make a positive. So there is my line. For our graph. Notice I'm connecting it all the way across. We are putting the arrows on the end, so make sure you're putting arrows at the end of your lines. All right, we have one last problem to do together. We have to graph y plus 1 equals negative 2/3 x. If it's not y equals, we have to do this problem, start this problem, the same way we did the ones where we were identifying m and b, because we have to be able to identify m and b to graph. And so we're going to solve for y. When we look, we have y plus 1, so we're going to subtract 1. Y is by itself now. And we have negative 2/3 x, and then we have minus 1. And so we have an m value of negative 2/3, that was the coefficient on x. And we have a b value of negative 1, that's your constant. And so I'm going to start at negative 1. And in that ratio, think of going down 2 and then right 3. We have a positive move. 1 negative. You don't need to draw a line there. But we have 1 negative move, 1 positive move. 1 negative move, 1 positive move. I'm going to reverse that and do 1 positive with 1 negative. 1 positive with 1 negative. But I'm making sure that these points still line up. And they do quite nicely. And so there's our line with our arrowheads. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you do have a couple of on your own. So you need to graph the given line, y equals negative 2/3 x plus 7. And then the second on your own is to name the slope and y-intercept of that given line. All right, ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful evening.